The Celestial Bloom Daycare Center floated in the commercial sector of Station Kepler 442, a massive orbital hub where 100 different species conducted trade, diplomacy, and the messy business of raising their young. The facility prided itself on accommodating children from across the galaxy, with specialized staff trained in xenopediatric care for dozens of different physiologies. But today, nothing was working. Emma pressed her scaled hands against her auditory sensors, trying to block out the cacophony that filled the main playroom. The Thoraxian infant in her arms continued its high-pitched keening, a sound that made the walls vibrate. Across the room, 3 Valorian younglings had formed a crying circle, their bioluminescent skin flashing distressed purples and reds. Near the window, a small Quellen had inflated itself to twice its normal size and was emitting a low, mournful hum that resonated in everyone's chest. "This is unprecedented," Emma muttered to her assistant. Sixthor, a 6-limbed Arachnian with decades of childcare experience. "I've never seen a cascade event like this." Zixthor's mandibles clicked anxiously. It started with little Piplix. She saw something out the window, a transport ship that reminded her of home perhaps, and began crying. Then the others picked up on her distress pheromones and emotional resonance. Now they're all feeding off each other's anxiety. Emma had tried everything in her professional arsenal. She'd adjusted the room's atmospheric composition to optimal comfort levels for each species. She'd dimmed the lights and played soothing harmonic frequencies calibrated for multi-species auditory systems. She'd offered treats, toys, and comfort objects. Nothing worked. If anything, the crying intensified. The other caregivers looked equally desperate. This wasn't just noise, it was becoming a biological hazard. Some species' distress calls could actually harm others if sustained too long. They were approaching that threshold. That's when Brody walked in with his cleaning cart. He was human, relatively new to the station, working as a janitor while he figured out his next move in life. Emma had seen him around, always quiet, always thorough in his work, but she'd never really spoken to him. Humans were still relatively uncommon this far from Earth, their species having only recently joined the galactic community. Brody stopped in the doorway, his brown eyes widening as he took in the chaos. 23 younglings from a dozen different species, all crying in their own unique and terrible ways. "Rough day?" he asked, his voice barely audible over the din. "Understatement," Emma shouted back. "You should probably come back later. We're dealing with it." But Brody had already set down his mop. He walked calmly into the center of the room, apparently unbothered by the sensory assault that had every trained caregiver on the edge of panic. Then he did something strange. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, round object, a coin, Emma's translator helpfully informed her, an archaic form of human currency that they apparently still carried for sentimental reasons. Brody held up the coin where the nearest younglings could see it. Several Valorian children paused mid-cry, their curiosity momentarily overriding their distress. He displayed the coin in his right hand, showing both sides, then closed his fist around it. What happened next defied Emma's understanding of physics. Brody made a simple gesture with his left hand, then opened his right palm. The coin was gone, completely vanished. The Thoraxian infant in Emma's arms stopped crying, its large, multifaceted eyes fixed on Brody with intense fascination. He smiled, that peculiar human expression that showed teeth, and reached behind the nearest Valorian child's auditory appendage. When his hand emerged, the coin was somehow there, as if it had been hiding behind the child's head the entire time. The Valorian made a sound Emma had never heard before, a delighted chirp. Brody pocketed the coin and pulled out something else, a simple piece of cloth. He showed it to the children, let them see it was just fabric, nothing special. Then he pushed it into his closed fist. When he opened his hand again, the cloth had transformed into a flower, artificial, Emma's sensors told her, but perfect in its construction. He handed the flower to Piplix, the Quellen who had started the crying cascade. Her inflation immediately began to decrease as she clutched the gift. The silence that fell over the room was almost shocking. 23 younglings of various species stared at Brody with absolute attention. Even the staff stood frozen, watching this human janitor work what appeared to be actual magic. For the next 10 minutes, Brody performed. He made coins appear and disappear. He pulled endless colored scarves from his sleeves. He somehow linked and unlinked metal rings that Emma's advanced scanner confirmed were solid and unbroken. He made a small ball vanish from one hand and appear in the other, over and over, each time from an unexpected place. The children were entranced. Not a single cry, not a single distress signal. They crowded around him, their previous anxiety completely forgotten. When Brody finally took a bow, the younglings erupted in applause, or their species-specific equivalent. Chirps, clicks, flashes of happy colors, and harmonic hums filled the air, but these were sounds of joy. Emma approached him as he gathered his cleaning supplies. How did you do that? What was that? That deception? That violation of conservation of mass? Brody laughed. They're called magic tricks. Sleight of hand mostly, misdirection. Humans have been doing them for thousands of years, just, for fun, entertainment. But the children, they were inconsolable. We tried every evidence-based technique in the Galactic Childcare database. Yeah, well, Brody shrugged. Sometimes kids don't need solutions. They just need wonder. A little mystery. Something impossible that makes them forget whatever was making them sad. Zixthor approached, mandibles clicking in what Emma recognized as amazement. Your species. You dedicate time and effort to learning elaborate deceptions purely for the entertainment of younglings. And adults too, Brody said. Magic shows are pretty popular where I'm from. My grandpa taught me these tricks when I was a kid. Emma watched as little Piplix clutched her artificial flower, still gazing at Brody like he'd hung the stars themselves. The other children had returned to their activities calm and happy, the earlier crisis completely resolved. Would you? Emma hesitated. Would you be willing to come back? Perhaps demonstrate these magic tricks regularly? Brody's grin widened. Are you asking me to be the daycare's official magician? I'm asking if you'd accept a position as cultural enrichment specialist, Emma corrected, already mentally drafting the job posting. With appropriate compensation, of course. As Brody agreed and headed back to finish his janitorial rounds, Emma reflected on humanity's strange gift. They were newcomers to the galaxy, lacking the advanced technology of elder species without natural weapons or impressive physical capabilities. But they had something else. Thousands of years of learning how to make each other smile, how to create wonder from nothing, how to comfort the distressed with nothing but cleverness and care. Perhaps that was the real magic, not the tricks themselves, but the very human impulse to perform them.